All right, so welcome back, everybody, to another episode of QuattroQuattroDos. Once again, this is your boy Christian, and today I have a very, very special guest, somebody that I look up to, honestly, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there respect, just because he's been around the city so long, and his soccer knowledge is second to none. So, I got Glenn Davis. So, how you doing, Glenn? Thank you for doing this.
Christian, thanks for having me on the show. If longevity stands for anything and people finally get to know you, you hang around somewhere long enough, somebody's going to know who you are. That's the way it works.
Hey, that's good to know. And we're glad to have you. There's so many people out there that, they want to do what you're doing, but obviously not everybody's doing it with the same passion and with the same love. So we appreciate that, as fans, as soccer people. So, we want to say thank you, first of all. But basically, what I wanted to do today is just kind of, go through your life a little bit, kind of, ask you questions about how growing up, in America, it's a whole different, I'm Argentinian, so obviously the way I see soccer is completely different. Especially here in the United States, it's a whole different. It's like a new game for everybody. It's a new thing. The sport, has grown so much since you were playing back in the 80s to today. There's so many millions of dollars more. So I just wanted to see your perspective, as growing up, as a kid, maybe playing as a child, and then going into college, and then, becoming a professional, and then what you see the soccer today. But one of the things that I saw in your Wikipedia, and digging through your stuff, was you grew up in New Jersey. So how was that growing up on the East Coast, and how was soccer back in the day when you were young over there?
Yeah, so here's the real difference. And first of all, thanks for your show, QuattroQuattroDos. Obviously, you're Argentine, so I must
No.
when it comes to the world of soccer. But things were completely different back in these days, and so I'm talking about the '70s, which very much ages me. But soccer was not in the suburbs. It was not in Spring, Texas. It was not in Katy, Texas, to make an example here in Houston. It was basically around the inner city with ethnic groups that had brought the sport to America that they loved. So fortunately, where I was in New Jersey, I was close to a lot of pockets of ethnicity, whether it's areas that were all German, areas that were all Scotch, areas that were predominantly Irish. So that's where the soccer was played. I got a really great stroke of luck because I had somebody from those communities come out and become my coach, because I was out in the suburbs a little bit west of New York City. My father had moved our family out there. He was a Marine veteran. He wanted to get away from the city. And, our ability to get this coach and then for him to bring us into those ethnic areas is really a lot how I became in love with the soccer. Now, the other key components were I had a brother who was an All-American goalkeeper. He got drafted in the North American Soccer League, and then I lived 20 minutes away from Giants Stadium. So I got to see Pelé, Beckenbauer. I saw Maradona come with Argentina when he was an 18-year-old kid after they won the '78 World Cup. So, I had a lot of tremendous influences. That's just a great reminder that if you got a passionate youth coach, you got a professional soccer team in your town like the Dynamo, which should be a part of, and the Dash I would put in there, should be a part of player development for any youth club here, going to those games and seeing pros. Now, the Dynamo have a lot of work to do in that area, but these were the influences that I had. So now the game is all over the place. Now a kid from Alabama named Chris Richards, can get signed by Bayern Munich and loaned out to Hoffenheim, right? So it's just incredibly different. The amount of people playing the game, the reach it has, it's become a moneymaker in the youth soccer community. So it's on a completely different level. And even from a professional standpoint, the New York Cosmos were owned by Warner Brothers, which, they had all kinds of money behind them, the Atari division of computers. And, there were these other teams that were sort of mom and pop teams in the North American Soccer League trying to keep up with the New York Cosmos, who had Pelé, Carlos Alberto, Marinho, Giorgio Quinaglia, Vladislav Bogicevic, all these guys that just became gods to kids like me and guys like me. And of course, then we do the college route. And then, you know, I was fortunate to play a couple years in pro leagues, which was very different than it is now. You know, I mean, you know, the care that athletes get now, the knowledge, sports medicine, or, you know, equipment, gear. I mean, kids on youth clubs now had more equipment and gear than we ever did as professional soccer players. So it's very different. It allows me to have this lens, and it allows me to appreciate the way I came up in the game, because it was number one priority, the game and the passion for it. And that's why I've been able to spend a lifetime avoiding the corporate world.
Right. Hey, that's good. So you were talking about your youth coach. Is this Tom McDonald? And if it is, I want you to talk about him, because I think giving credit, you know, to those people, like, for example, I could name a couple of people that maybe instill that passion in me. I just wanted, you know, I wanted to hear how he maybe kind of shaped you into becoming a soccer guy, you know?
Yeah, you know, mentioning his name makes me a little emotional, because he was almost like a second father to me. He made soccer such an exciting game. He was the diminutive little Scotsman from Kearney area in New Jersey, which is where a lot of the Scots settled. So that's where Tab Ramos was from, that area. John Harkes, a lot of those guys that helped to put Kearney on the map. But, you know, he just made the game so exciting to us, and just was a very big influence when it comes to, you know, lighting the fire under a group of kids. And, you know, my high school team and my club team were very successful teams that sent guys on to all different colleges around the country. You know, other pros, including Dan Canner, who played for the New York Cosmos, was a great childhood friend of mine. God rest his soul, he's passed away. So has Tom McDonald. But just highly influential. And it just is a real simple reminder that, you know, if you get the right youth coach, forget about the club you're in. If you have the right youth coach, it can just threefold impress upon a young person. You know, it's just like getting the best teacher. I never forget, I went to Boston University on a full scholarship at first. And I remember there were not a lot of classes I liked, and I probably wasn't the best student. And I remember I had, believe it or not, an art class where we were identifying pieces of art from all the different, you know, Baroque period, all the different periods where the great artists were coming from. And, you know, to this day, I remember that teacher, and that teacher made it so interesting that he brought me into a subject that I really didn't have a lot of knowledge about or passion for. And to this day now, I'm a big art guy, and I collect a few local pieces of art from local artists. So, I mean, this is how it works.
Yeah, that's awesome. And going into your college career, you know, let's talk a little bit about that. So you said you went to Boston University with a full ride, and then you went to Davis Elkins College. How was that experience, you know, playing soccer in college back in
So
your day?
college was a little tumultuous for me. I want to be, you know, very upfront. I was probably a bit immature when I went to college. I was playing well. I was on Boston University, a program that was trying to emerge. At the time that I went to college, a lot of the top programs in the country were smaller colleges. Philadelphia Textile, Hartwick was a national champion that produced national team players like Glenn Meyernick. Quincy College in Illinois, St. Louis University was always, you know, a big soccer. So Southern Connecticut, I mean, all these smaller colleges really had adapted soccer because they didn't have football programs, most of them. So those were the places you went. Those were the teams that you watched on the East Coast. So that's where my influence was. I had some struggles in Boston. I ended up transferring to Davis and Elkins College because I had a one-track mind. I wanted to be a professional soccer player, and I wanted to get there somehow. And I think my first year anywhere as a freshman was probably going to be a bit of a challenge. And to all those coaches who had to put up with me, I'm very, very sorry. And I regret putting you through hell.
Nice, nice. And how was that transition? You know, because you were talking about, you know, you had one goal basically to become a professional player, and what, and you accomplished that. So how was that, you know, transition? You know, working through college and then becoming that professional player. What was that like?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. I had various college coaches. I have to say, I'm not sure about my development in the college game. I think, I had Trinidad and Tobago national team teammates, guys from all over the world, guys that were older because I went to an NAIA program. So a lot of ways, we all just love soccer. We were in the hills of West Virginia. We played in gyms in the winter. It's 4 feet of snow outside. We get all bundled up and we play in the gym for hours in the wintertime. A lot of it was self-driven. And then you had good mentors along the way and people that helped you, including your teammates. And then basically I got into the ASL, by trying out. I mean, I was identified as a college player that was worth giving an opportunity, and the rest is history. Played in a couple ASL championships and came here to Houston. Soccer was in a very different place then. We played at Butler Stadium. We played at Del Mar Stadium, which are high school facilities. We'd go on the road, and sometimes we'd play in the Pontiac Silver Dome, in Detroit, which doesn't even exist anymore, the Gator Bowl in Florida. So we'd play either in a high school stadium locally or, an NFL stadium with a couple thousand people. So very different times. Very grateful for those times. It helped to shape me. Got to play with some amazing players, got to play against some World Cup stars. And all of it goes into the pot of shaping you and creating kind of, your outlook on the sport. And then, of course, you've got to be thinking as the sport modernizes and continues to go forward. A lot of my thinking has to change now in the way I analyze a game or look at a game. I'm grateful for all the experiences. They were fun. I got to mark and cover, guys like Nanny Kubias, hardened veterans who played in the English First Division. There was no Premier League, and got to play alongside some great players. A captain of Hungary, and a guy named Peter Carr who played in the First Division in England. So all these things I'm very thankful for, and even more thankful for now.
And going into your whole professional career, I wanted to know what it is to be a professional, maybe back in the 80s. Can you kind of take us like a day, like a regular day as a professional soccer player in the United States in the 1980s? How was that like?
Yeah, you had to be pretty self-motivated.
Yeah.
I'll give you a good example here in Houston. Back in those days, and I think they did this with the Dash, which is a pretty smart thing. But back in those days, they cut a deal with an apartment complex for all the players, the ones that were married, the coaching staff. So you all kind of lived in one area, which that was. Sometimes you don't really want to see somebody. You know what I mean? You want a little bit of your own space. But that was interesting in itself. That was done also probably for economics and logistics and things like that. We trained either out on South Main at Butler Stadium, or we trained at HBU. We used to train before the Houston Rockets, and the Rockets were practicing at Houston Baptist University, to tell you where the NBA was. The only difference was we'd be there before them using the lockers, and they'd come in and yell, "Hey, you Dynamo's guys, you got to get out of here." And then Fitch would walk in, Elijah Wan, and all these guys would walk by. And of course, we'd go out and jump in our Volkswagen Rabbits while these guys were driving in Mercedes Benzes, But it was all what was going on. It was great. We would train a lot. You had to be self-motivated too. You don't have, back in those days, the staff. You don't have a fitness guy telling you got to come and do this to rehab and get yourself back on the field through physical therapy. There was a lot of self-motivation from all the guys that I was on. For me to sit here and think that a guy that started in the '74 World Cup, Wim Serbier for the Netherlands against Germany, was living in an apartment complex called the Shannon Apartments in Houston, Texas, back in those days, playing for the Houston Dynamos. And
That's crazy.
Wim, God rest his soul, I think it had a lot of financial problems. Yeah, it's remarkable, and the quality of some of the players that were there. It just we were just before our time. That's what a lot of us say.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy to think that, soccer was completely different. You see now all the big stars, like you see these documentaries like Sunderland Till I Die, and you see like a second, third division team with great facilities and, all the things that they have at their hands.
It really is crazy. And the fact that you recognize that as a young guy, maybe that's what this interview puts out there. You get older and you see how, for me to see where this game has gotten, for me to see that there's infrastructure in this stadium in Houston. I mean, it's still every morning when I think of that stadium, which is a couple miles away from where I live, I just say to myself, that wasn't even, nobody even proposed that. That wasn't even a thought that crossed anybody's mind in the 80s, that you were going to build a stadium for soccer. In fact, the coolest stadium to play in was Lockhart Stadium, which is the one that Inter Miami has redone now beautifully. Okay. It's not going to be their ultimate stadium, but back then Lockhart Stadium in Fort Lauderdale was basically a square with bleachers around it, but it had a gorgeous surface and the fans were close to the field. That was like, to me, the primo place.
Top notch. Yeah. That's crazy. And you also played indoor soccer. How's that transition, playing indoor soccer? Because, that's a whole different game right there. It's still soccer, but, it's like a whole different game mentality and stuff.
Yeah, it's a different sport. It was a very dark period for me because I had a broken navicular joint, which is the joint that Yao Ming had, which they put screws in before the Olympics, if you remember that. And I remember that happening and them trying to rush him to play in the Olympics. And I said, that's not great for a guy that's that big and puts that much pressure. Yeah. It's at the top of your foot. It continually kept breaking for me. So I never got to play a lot of indoor soccer. I played a handful of games. I mean, I was on the roster of a team, but like I said, it was like, okay, you go to the weight room. There was nobody really doing anything around my injury or guiding me as to, what am I going to do to get back? And of course, I get back, and I guess like the third game in, I'm against the boards in a hockey arena, and somebody comes across the top of the same foot, and the thing breaks again. So my indoor experiences were not really happy ones. Although, there was a time period in the United States where the indoor game was drawing a spectacular amount of fans. And of course, our team here in Houston, the Houston Hotshots, filled the Summit back in the day, which is now Osteen's church, but filled it on occasions and was owned by Giorgio Berlenghi and actually Alfredo Brenner, the brother of Gabrielle Brenner. So indoor was a bit of a dark period for me, but that wasn't for everybody. But again, it's just another part of the experiences that make up your life.
Interesting. That's very interesting because nowadays there's a couple of teams here in Houston, like indoor soccer teams, that they kind of do the whole traveling and there's a league, but obviously I it's probably not the same as it was back then. But I wanted to ask you like a more specific question about your position, because you played center back, right? Which is what I grew up playing too, back in high school and stuff like that. So I just wanted to, kind of dig in a little bit into that. How is it, back in the day playing, center back against, the style of soccer was completely different, I imagine, to now. So like, what are the differences that you kind of see there?
Yeah, Eddie Robinson and I, because we're both former center backs, we talk about this a lot. And look, the game has gotten modernized. The position has changed. Basically, your job in my day was, I'm 6'2", was good in the air, break up plays, mark talented center forwards, get the ball and give it to the more skilled players, which, in this case on my team was a Yugoslavian guy named Les Shkreli, was a guy named Beto de Santos, his nephews, Gio and Jonathan. And, was different. You know, you marked somebody, you denied the turn, you won the ball, you gave it to somebody quickly. You moved up the field. You stayed central always, because that's the main area you were protecting. The ball got out wide. You tried not to get dragged out of the middle. You tried to stay in the middle, because ultimately that's where the ball is going to come, and you want to be there, you know, to be the guy that heads it away or clears it. I got a lot of great instruction from an English first division player that really helped take my game to the next level. In fact, help me become an all-star. But it's very different. You know, now we look at games, and I'm sure the Dynamo, you know, and their center backs are going to flare out and leave a big space between them. So, you know, a number 6 can come back in and be the playmaker and set play. So I think the positions change. I think the qualifications for the position are changed. In some cases, I feel like people have become less of a good one-on-one defender, but maybe better ball players. In other words, as build-in play and setting play and passers of the ball, that kind of thing. But the position has evolved immensely. And again, you know, I put myself in that situation and go, wow, okay, you would have been playing the game a lot differently if you were around right now in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. And well, I mean, I'm not, you know, I haven't played, you know, that long, but I can kind of see, you know, the difference between me, you know, me playing as a younger guy here in high school, and then, you know, how people play nowadays. It's only been like what, 10 years, but you know, there's been differences a lot, especially with goalkeepers now playing with their feet more and stuff like that. So it's interesting.
No question.
Yeah. And then going kind of into that, you know, you did a little bit of coaching. So, you know, how was that, you know, period in your life, you know, going to the whole youth coaching?
Wonderful period. You know, it's funny, I had this conversation with the GM, Pat Onstad, and I did more than a little coaching. I did a lot of coaching. I did about probably 10 years. And, you know, we built a program, a former teammate of mine, Tony Johnson, kind of from scratch. We just took a team every year and built it. And this is when the club model was developing, and actually was started here in Houston by the Texans Soccer Club with an Englishman named Roy Reese, and another guy named J.R. Lee was kind of Roy's right-hand man. And we just kind of modeled it after that. We became great competitors of those. Both clubs were putting players into Major League Soccer. You know, you had the Baba brothers and Rusty Pierce coming from the Texans. You had Chris Bondi. You had Josh Gardner. You had a bunch of guys coming from our club. We put a lot of guys into Major League Soccer back in those days, on 2 practices a week and a game on the weekend and a bunch of tournaments. The club model now, as you know, is completely different. Tons of money being made. It's a very different thing. But this was one of the most satisfying periods of my life. I still have tremendous kind of friendships with a lot of those players that have gone on to win national championships in college, to continue in the game as coaches. Many of them are coaches, college coaches around the country. Chris Bondi just got named the coach of the University of Connecticut. You got Chad Riley, who was in the NCAA College Cup with Notre Dame, lost in the semifinals on penalty kicks to the eventual national champions, Clemson. So we got a really rich soccer history here. And you know, I'm really probing and pushing the Dynamo organization to embrace that more. They have not wanted to embrace that in the past under prior leadership. And I think that's going to change, because if we really do want a culture change and an identity change here, it has to include a lot of the kids that played youth soccer, not just the championship teams. Of course, it has to be the championship teams. And every year, the players that are coming off the current Dynamo team as potentials to work in the organization. But you got to take it even farther back, because it's vital. When you have kids that have grown up on these fields to go on to these heights. Eric Quill is now an assistant coach for the Columbus Crew. I mean, this is a guy that should be working for the Houston Dynamo, like Gardner, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to soapbox it here a little bit. But those were great times working with kids. I learned a tremendous amount. I learned to become a better coach. I took coaching licenses, having to deal with parents and players of all different ages. Fantastic. And really, I robbed from Peter to pay Paul. I mean, I took a lot of the lessons from my youth coach, and that's how all these great coaching trees begin. I mean, there were lessons that are still applicable from my youth coach in the 70s that work today. Now, there are other things that don't work as well.
Yeah.
Okay, but there are a lot of things that do. And at the end of the day, lighting the fire of passion under kids, enjoying what you're doing. I absolutely loved coaching. I was out at Bear Creek Park, honestly, 6-7 days of the week. Absolutely loved every minute of it. Sometimes still yearn for those times.
That's crazy. I also practiced at Bear Creek Park when I was a kid, so that's
Great,
funny. Yeah.
A lot of great players have come
Oh yeah.
through
A
Bear
lot.
Creek Park. A lot of legends in their own mind also come through Bear Creek Park, but it's just incredible. I mean, you think of that history of that field alone, and that's before we talk about Meyer Park and all the other facilities around Houston. When you think of the players that played, on those surfaces out there as little kids, and have gone on now to be coaches of college programs, assistant coaches in Major League Soccer, have had professional careers, have gone and played overseas. It's incredible. And I really urge your listeners and people to not forget about the great soccer history. Don't live in it, but we do need to take pride in that. We have it going back to the late 60s. Seattle has found a way to cultivate it and use it as an overall big picture. Hey, look, we're all in it together here. Pride of Seattle soccer. Well, we should be doing that with Houston. And we haven't had the leadership in place that knew how to do that, or even aware of it probably, and didn't really want to listen to it. I think we do now, and I think we can change that. And that will really help to send an identity and a culture change that embraces, collaborates, works with the Houston soccer community instead of being divisive with it. Because right now, it should be better. It should be better. We should have all oars pulling in the same direction in the boat.
Yeah, it's crazy that you mentioned, the whole history of Houston, being a soccer city since the 60s, 70s. And it's crazy because when I started, doing this podcast, the show, the first thing I did, was kind of go back and look and to see, where everything kind of started in a way. And when you go back and you look, you're like, wow, we had a professional team way before, this professional team.
60s.
Yeah, there was soccer way before, the city was, the city that it is today.
60s in the Astrodome, which was
It's crazy.
Seventh or eighth wonder of the world.
Right.
There's still a few of those guys here in Houston. Billy Safidis is one of them. And they played in the Astrodome. I mean, prior to that, the first ever soccer game in the Astrodome was Real Madrid and West Ham United. West Ham United had, that was probably 67. West Ham United had Bobby Moore, who in 66 lifted the World Cup, the only time England won it. Can you imagine that?
That's history.
I mean, this is incredible history, and nobody knows about this. Nobody talks about this.
Wow, that's insane.
And by the way, I do want to make sure I say this because, I'm kind of a conduit here, I feel, for a lot of people, even going back to those times and to current people. We're all in this together, but there have been a tremendous amount of unnamed people that have done tremendous work building our youth community, our adult communities, and they have never been acknowledged. So I just really want to mention that there's a lot of people that were real builders here in Houston.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll try to get as many as we can on this show. So let's do it.
I can help you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And then just to kind of finish off, this whole new phase in your career as a broadcaster, how did that spark up? And, how was it? Let me just go ahead and throw you all the questions in there. But how was it, calling World Cups and, Champions League, Serie A, you did the men's national team, you did Olympics, what are those experiences like?
Yeah, I got tremendous opportunity. I got a lot of support from a lot of great people. I think they recognize my passion. Becoming a broadcaster is a completely different thing. It became a third career, frankly. And it's now 25 years, 7 or 8 World Cups, networks like Fox, ESPN, NBC, Olympics. There was Fox Sports World at the time, which was taking in feeds from around the world, call it games. I was in the right place at the right time. I got to really cut my teeth doing a lot of games off monitors. I mean, back in the early years of MLS, I was doing color. I started as a color analyst, and I was doing it for a couple different teams: Kansas City, Tampa, the Dallas Burn, whole bunch of teams, working with tremendous guys like Bill Land, Brad Sham, a whole bunch of different tremendous historic broadcasters. So I was a really, really lucky guy. The timing was right for me. It may not have been right as a professional player with the height of the league, but it was as a commentator. So it led to a lot of opportunity. College games, international games, all that you mentioned. Ricky Davis, the former Cosmo guy, and I used to do Serie A games on the weekend in Los Angeles. So I was flying out there a lot, and just it's a wonderful medium to learn. And I really thought I could be a very, very good analyst. I tied in the youth coaching to that and getting coaching points across with clarity. But then, with the changing tide and a lot of the 94 guys coming out, I kind of figured, wow, I better learn how to do play-by-play, because, a lot of these guys, based on their name, their notoriety, are going to end up grabbing the color positions. So this made me very versatile. I can host, I can do play-by-play, which is really my bread and butter now. Got a couple radio shows. If I had to step in and be an analyst, I could do it in a New York Minute. I've learned and understand the business more. I have great conversations with the Dynamo TV director, who heads up the TV side and the radio side of it, Brock Jessel. I think I have a lot of things to add there when it comes to overall production now, because I've learned that. The beginning did not know that. Green as could be, had no clue what I was doing, and opportunity came. So it's
awesome.
Taken me around the world, the stadiums in Central America, stadiums in Europe. It really is pretty remarkable, because I was not trained for any.
That's amazing. I'm kind of getting into that a little bit now, just doing that on the weekends on a friend's league. But it seems amazing, also the opportunities that come with it, like you said, traveling and getting to know people and just watching soccer, which is probably the best thing, you just sit there and watch.
It's a pretty good gig.
It's a nice gig, right?
You put a lot into it, you care about it. I think people, I hope people connect with my passion, my seriousness, my love of the game. Those are the things that I feel. I do get a little critical, but I do it in a healthy way. It's never to assassinate anyone's character. It's because I care. And we all sometimes want things to be different and want to see things accelerated, specific to this market. And I like some of the changes that we're seeing now with the Dynamo.
Yeah. So I didn't want to get into the Dynamo, because I know we could probably talk for hours.
Well, we could talk for hours.
Yeah, and I know
okay. That's a good thing. By the way, the general manager, Pat Onstad, likes to talk too. And I think, if you heard my Soccer Matters show this week, we had Pat on, we had the new coach, Paulo Nagamura, on ESPN 97.5. And we also had on Asher Mendelson, who's the new, technical director. These guys are transparent. They're communicative. They're talking. They're not hiding. This is great. They're not afraid of a couple of difficult questions. And this is the way to turn it around. We've been hiding. We have to give Tab Ramos a lot of credit, because Tab brought to the coaching position tremendous transparency. And I think he set the tone there. You are not coming back without being transparent, without communicating to what's left of your fan base and to the media. If you don't do that, you got no chance. The fact that we had closed practices under a coach in the past is an absolute joke, and to allow that was an absolute joke. Okay, right. Not mincing any words here. Okay, but it's frustrating when you care about this market, you care about the sport, and you feel like people don't. Okay, and that they're preserving, and sitting in positions, but really want to keep at arm's length people that can help them. And people from the Houston soccer community that can help them, not imports. Houston soccer community.
Exactly. I agree 1,000% with everything you said. But just to let you go now, I just have 5 questions, kind of like a fast round.
Let's do it.
top of your head, and then we'll let you go because I know you have stuff to do. But yeah, favorite player ever. First question.
Johan Cruyff, the Netherlands, and Ajax.
Awesome. Team to watch today.
Ooh, team to watch today. That's a good one. All right, so I'm going to go. There's a couple that you could obviously put into that category. I'm going to go with Arsenal because I think Arteta's beginning to turn it around. They've gotten a couple of good results. It seems like it's a team that's bonding a little bit more, and they're young.
Interesting, because they had kind of like a little rough patch there. Player to watch today. What are some of the players that you like to watch?
Ooh, I've been trying to pick off a little bit more of the Italian and German league. Sometimes I get over Premier League, to be honest with you, as much as I love it. I think the players that I'm really keeping an eye on is the American player, because I think we're in unprecedented times. So, Ricardo Pepi going to Augsburg. I'm obviously keeping an eye on him with the transfer fee and everything else. And all the Americans in Europe, because ultimately they're coming back to be a part of our national team. I think they can make some noise. I think they're a motivated bunch of young guys. I think they can do some things that have never been done before when it comes to our U.S. national team. And of course, we have the World Cup in 2026. God, please bring it to Houston.
Right, we're all praying.
And I know you're with me on that one, Christian.
Yes, I am.
But my eyes on these young, ambitious U.S. players right now.
Awesome. Question 4. What is something that you like about Houston soccer, or the best thing about Houston soccer?
The best thing about it is the many years of since I'm a little bit older now, seeing all the people come out of the youth community that are making noise in the game, whether they're coaches, whether they're working with youth clubs. I love that sort of compounding nature that comes with a great soccer community. And of course, the multicultural thing here. Look, I'm talking to an Argentine right now who loves the game of soccer, right? I'm a guy that grew up in New Jersey. We all have a common bond. We're all like-minded individuals. We're all passionate about the game. It's our game too. It's an American game now, okay?
Yeah.
As well. So that's the thing I like about the soccer community. I just think we have to galvanize it and bring it together.
Awesome. And last question that I think everybody wants to know is, who is the better defender, or who was the better defender, Glenn Davis or Eddie Robinson?
Oh, well, the more decorated one is going to be Eddie Robinson. We did have a lot of similarities, that we did have some anger management issues probably, but that's what came with the center back position in those days. So I'm going to give a nod to my man, Eddie, but different times and differing places and differing experiences for both of us. And, for me to see, when I was looking at those players that came in from San Jose, that we got gifted that team, that was a gift. We didn't build that team. That was a gift to Houston, right? And those guys were a tremendous bunch of guys, and Eddie was one of them. But when I look at that team, and I remember them complaining about the locker room at the University of Houston, and I'm saying to myself, well, hell, we didn't even have a locker room. We had to share it at U of H, and we had the Rockets drop kicking us out of there before we were done taking our shower. So, it's all from your perspective, right?
Right. Yeah.
And when I hear people complaining about salaries, I'm going, oh wow, I made $1,000 a month in an apartment. It's all really relative to our own experiences. And I think the real challenge is for us to get out of our experiences and go directly to the things that we all know and were taught, and be able to see it in a bigger picture. And, that's just a fun example of, you look ahead. Now you look at, now Eddie's going, my God, look at what these players have, right? I mean, this is the way it goes. For me, I can't even believe it, right? But it's very different. It's also very cool to watch it progress. Awesome.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for jumping on and, kind of sharing a little bit of your story here on the show. And if you want to just let everybody know, I'm pretty sure everybody knows where they can listen to you, but if you want to just go ahead and let everybody know where they can listen.
Giving me the vine for shameless promotion. All right. It's Soccer Matters on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. We'll be on next Wednesday, but generally Tuesdays. And I don't know if people know that I have another show on in Austin on the Horn. And there is a lot of Austin FC talk. I mean, obviously, if you're doing a radio show up there, you have to cover it. Don't get upset, Dynamo fans. Just a guy going into another market doing radio, trying to spread the lore. In fact, there is some Dynamo talk up there as well. And you get a sense of what's going on in Austin too, and other markets. It's just another hour of more soccer content. And you can hit me up on Twitter at Glenn Davis Soccer, at Soccer Matters GD. Same thing on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Don't forget, you can always follow QuattroQuattroDos, at QuattroQuattroDos on Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, thank you guys for everything, and we'll see you guys next time.
QuattroQuattroDos. Thank you, Cristian.
Exactly. Thank you so much.